I'm Captain Larry Bell with Texas Fishing Tips, and this is your weekly fishing report.
Down here on Cedar Flat, all this area here is all starting to come into play. Now we got great tidal flows coming through Cedar Bayou, and I'm sure some have been up there and fished. I've seen a few people up there fishing the Gulf side and fishing up and down the cut, all up and down this area here. On both sides of the mouth of Cedar Flat, Cedar Reef, all this area down through here on both sides has been pretty good. You've got all the shell that's on this side of it. Bunch of shell that's back in there. You've got a nice little back lake that pops back off in there. And with the amount of water that we've had that's been pushed back up into our system now, we've got these big bull tides. They're starting to push a lot of water in for us, and it's helpful. A lot of bait migration starting to happen, starting to push a lot of extra bait in here, starting to see that taking place. So fish are going to really start to show up, and it's going to start getting really active all back in these areas. Not that it hadn't already, but it's going to get even better and better as we get further into May and even into June and July. This tidal flow from Cedar Bayou from the Gulf will be really good. You should be able to start going out to the Gulf if you haven't already and start trying to pick your days to go out there and fish the surf, fish the guts out there. Throwing your topwater baits has been good. Throwing plastics will be good. Those are all great choices if you're going to go out there and go do that. Fish up and down the cut as well. There's plenty of locations up and down Cedar Bayou that you can get off on the side and wade those areas. Got good bottom there. Just work it like you would anywhere else we've talked about in past, and work in those areas. Make sure you got bait in the area. Make sure you incorporate a major or minor into your fishing day into those areas. That flow is really good coming in and out of there. So take your time when you get up there to the mouth. That channel is pretty good cut, and I know they're supposed to start doing some more work on it. They're waiting for the whooping crane season to end, but there has a little bit more cut out to do up there in that area. So if you see the work barge up in that area, just make sure that you give them plenty of room to do what they got to do. But anyway, that said, all this area down through here have been redfish in here. There's been some scattered flounder that have caught out of here. There's been trout are starting to show up now. Again, the trout that we're catching, a lot of them are in that 15 to 17 mark. A lot are in the lower edge of that. And ever so often we'll get you're catching nice 18 or 19, even possibly a 20. But those fish will begin to start showing up even more so as we get, again, further into May and into June. We'll start seeing that flow come in there really well. And there's days that it's really good. You just got to get back in here and you just got to fish it. Now, main things that's been working for us, I've been throwing lots of the supermodel down south and the regular size down south. Twisted Tea has become one of my favorite colors to throw, especially up in these areas here. That off-color water, it really stands out up in that. My go-to is always going to be Magic Grass and Chicken of the Sea. But the Twisted Tea has kind of pushed up there as far as a favorite to throw. Still using 16th-ounce jig heads. I like for that bait to really linger in the water column as we're working these, knee-deep and thigh-deep areas, especially as you get closer into the shoreline back there. If you get out over the shell back toward the mouth of Cedar, you're really going to want that little bit lighter jig head to stay on top of that shell. There's been some redfish that's been cruising in and out of that area there. There's been some nice trout in and out of that area, especially in the mouth of that back lake. And on the edges out there close to the mouth of Cedar, you can work down the edge of that right there. It's been good on both sides. Another bait that's been pretty good is working free lining a shrimp. Marker 54 jerk shrimp, just free line that. So they have a weedless setup, and then they've got their hard bait that's got a treble underneath it. So whatever you're a little bit better at, so you could probably take the hard bait with the popping cork and work it off that little bit deeper edge and probably keep it around that 4 to 5 foot of water to locate fish. Or if you like the jerk shrimp that's weedless, tie that thing on and work in the grass, work the edges, work up into the shell with it. It's really an effective bait in that area there. Redfish tend to love it. Trout tend to love it. Occasional flounder will hit that, and you can get that as well. All these areas here that we're talking about got plenty of good grass that's up in that area. Just take your time working these areas. Like I say, the bait's up in this area. Water clarity has been really good, unless we've had these super high winds, which we talked about last week. Looks like we got more coming, these higher wind days. So just make sure that you find yourself protected. Again, you may want to keep that conventional anchor on board for those particular days if you are on the water on those particular days, so you don't have to worry about your boat breaking away from you, because that's not a great feeling. Continue to work up and down the shoreline, off the point, all the way up into Bray. We've had some good times up there in Bray around the edges. The back lake mouths that are back up in here, those open up. Now, you do need to be aware there is an occasional alligator that are up in this area as well, so they are around. So if you're going to wade this area, just keep your eyes peeled, because they are around and moving. And keep working around here. You'll see that floater house that's down in that. Keep on coming around here to the lake. These back lakes that go back into Little Brundit back in there. There's been some decent fish that have been caught back in there. It's scattered. It can be, some days are better than others. But I'm really liking to fish these back lakes that are here right off of Bray. The topwater bite's been pretty good. If you're not getting the blow-ups or the swirls or the takes on the topwater bait, if you've got bait working in there, then put that 16th ounce jig head on. Throw that medium size down south twisted T in this water back in here. When it gets really clear, you may want to go to a Little John mirror lure. You may want to use the down south Dirty Tequila or Blue Moon back in this area here. Those translucent baits, when that water gets super clear out of this grass in here, becomes a really effective bait. But again, just take your time, locate your bait, locate these areas here that's got guts, a little bit deeper edges in the grass. Incorporate the majors and minors and pay attention to what your weather's doing. You'll locate some good fish. Back around here off of Port Bay, this area back down in here, back behind this little grass island, back up in the little cove. It's got a lot of good mud. You got to cut through there. You've got this shoreline that's right here that's pretty hard packed right in here. This starts to get in play now. Water temps are starting to get in the upper 70s, starting to touch 80s. Some days a little more than that, depending on how much sunshine they're getting on top of those. So these become areas that you really want to pay attention to later in the morning or maybe early afternoon. There's a little bit deeper edges like this. These fish will tend to drop off a little bit shallower water, get into some deeper water, 4 or 5 feet, maybe not quite that deep, but somewhere in that area, 2 to 5 foot. It's an area for you to pay attention to, depending on what time of day that you get to fish. Get up on the shoreline. Work this edge down in here. Get in this little cove back here off this west shoreline here in Port Bay. Back up in here. This whole area back in here has got a great bottom. There are little mushy spots here and there, but these become still in play. Everything has not transitioned completely to the hard packed sand, shell bars, and grass completely yet. We're still catching fish over grass and mud and clump shell, so that's still in play. Not to say that you shouldn't be trying to fish some of those areas, but there must be indicators over that hard packed sand and shell bar that you got to have some bait working over those areas. If you don't have bait working those areas just yet, then your fish are not going to be showing up there to it yet. So just remember, keep that in mind whenever you decide that you want to fish a particular area. But these areas down on the shoreline, all this area here, great, terrific grass. You've got nice level changes in here. You've got knee-deep water. You can move out, 50, 60 to 100 yards and be in waist to maybe belly-deep water if that's where you want to be, depending on what type of bait you're chunking. Again, still throwing a 16th ounce jig head. We'll probably continue to throw a 16th ounce jig head into May or late May, early June. Just to allow the bait to really flow and float through those water columns. The fish are not being super, super aggressive. More trout are starting to show up, especially over these grassy areas. This point, this whole area down in here, again, great amount of bait that's working in these areas here. We've got scattered redfish that are over this area. Again, some trout, some nice trout have been caught back in this area here. Again, a lot of the 13 to 16 inch size, a bunch of those, this time last year, those fish would have been fine as far as if you were keeping some. But with the new trout rig at 17 to 23, a lot of those are just coming up short of that. But that's a good indicator that the trout population is starting to head in the direction that we want it to be. So those fish next year will be good size fish. They'll be in that slot range for next year. But continue to work these areas. A lot of this grass in here again. We've pulled out a few flounder as well. They're scattered. It's not consistent. But you got to really kind of either get fortunate and catch a flounder in this area, or you got to really just get hard down and target that over these potholes in these areas that are back in here up on the shoreline. The burner shad for the flounder have done pretty good in the chicken of the sea, purple rain, white ice, all in the burner shad have been pretty good with catching flounder. We're in the new moon phase as well, so take that into consideration that all sizes can come into play for you. You know, even the hard baits, topwater baits, like to throw those. With the winds that we've had in this particular shoreline right here has been real heavily wind blown. So you maybe have to go to a little bit bigger topwater bait if that's what your choice is as far as the type of bait that you want to throw, the one knocker. Even if you want to even go up to the super spook, it's a really big bait. Of course, if you're a head and fan or a skitter walk, one of those types of baits that you maybe want to go to the he dog, which is a little bit bigger, louder bait. It's got a different pitch to it. So that's going to be something that you really want to pay attention to if topwater is your choice. But again, our plastics have been good. Again, 16th ounce jig heads. Look for your bait working in these areas. Again, incorporate that major and minor. We've got big water that's come into these areas, so a lot of water has opened up, and it's become more fishable in a lot of places. If you're able to get your boat underneath the 188 bridge, even the backside over there, part of Port Bay, a lot of good redfish that have been back in that area. If you got a real tall center console, you can't get underneath it. And then, of course, with the high tides, you're not going to be able to get the bridge anyway unless you got like a John boat or a kayak or something to that effect. But when the water is right and it's down low enough and you got a low center console, get back there in that section of Port Bay. Man, it can be really good and dynamite. Bait's been stacked back in there, black drum in that area, red drum in that area, scattered flounder ever so often, but it's been really a good time back there if you catch it, water levels just right. Long Reef Bend, all down here in Paul's Mott as well. This point, all the way down here into these mouths that go back in here toward Fence and all that area there with these big tides that we've had and the big water that's coming here. If your boat is skinny enough and it can run and set down and you have enough space to get your boat back up, get back in here in Fence Lake area. All these areas that are all back in here. You can run these. You got deeper access points on these edges back here. There's been, I personally have not found the schools of black drum, but I'm not particularly pinpointing those. I'm looking for redfish and scattered trout, better trout back in some of these areas, but there's been redfish in here. We've caught black drum out of here, some scattered flounder ever so often. A lot of bait that have pushed back in these areas here. It just kind of depends on which day that you get, depending on how much water is pushed back in these areas here. If you've run these areas back before, you can run this, all these back lakes connect to each other in and out, and you can run lots of different areas and open themselves up to lots of opportunity back here. Now, with the big winds that we've had, you get super, super windy days, and you're able to navigate across these open bays, safely, and it's not a problem for you. Get back in here because these back lakes like this, they really knock a lot of the wind off of you. So, yeah, you still feel the wind, but it's just not going to beat you up. You can fish your entire day or how much of the day that you want to fish back here, and it be comfortable for you. It won't tear you down and just beat you to death. So, but these back lakes interconnect all the way. You can take them all the way to Paul's Mott, to Allen's Bight from Paul's Mott area all the way up into that and pop back out. So you can run protected for a long way if you don't want to contend with the open bay, but at some point you'll have to somewhere. So just keep those options in mind. Allow your, know the capabilities of what your boat can and can't do. So don't put yourself in jeopardy trying to get back in here to fish it. But there's plenty of opportunity out front. You get back up here on top of Paul's Mott. You get down here in Long Reef Bend. You've got all these back lake mouths that have popped open. That, again, with the amount of water that we've had pushed into these become really good. So a little further out, you've got this bar that's out there, maybe 100, 150 yards off the shoreline. With all the extra water, get up there, get close to the shoreline. You'll find some redfish pushed up there against that. You'll find some decent trout that have been scattered out over the grass over this area in here. These mouths further out, as you get out there on that bar away from it, fish the edge of that bar because it's an opportunity for fish to go up and down that bar looking for bait, looking for something to eat, and you can sit there. Man, you can throw your double D in this area here. It works out perfectly for that. throw the medium size to the supermodel size of the down souths in this area. Just work all this area here. If you want to get up tight to the shoreline up there in the Long Reef Bend area and throw your top water bait up there on the grass line, man, you'll have some great opportunities with some major blow-ups from some redfish, good trout. I have not pulled out any flounder out of this particular area. But if you got back in these mouths and fished those guts back in there and took your down south burner shads of the purple rain, chicken of the sea, and just kind of bounce those along in those guts, more than likely, I'm sure you'll probably pull out a flounder too if that's what your choice is, if that's what you want to target. It would lend itself for that. Just continue to work this shoreline. There's been a great amount of bait that's pushing up here. Again, trout are showing up and down the shoreline here, just depending on what day you're getting the opportunity to do and whatever you're able to fish it. Again, incorporate the majors and minors. I can't tell you how important that is to continue to do. Pay attention to what your winds are doing, because we do have some bigger winds that are becoming later this week. So pay attention to that. And then, of course, your tides, incoming and outgoing, and how much water is going to be pushing out. Work up and down these shorelines, work those different baits, and be patient with it, and you'll locate your nice fish.
Thanks for watching. I'm Captain Larry Bell.